All right, Lev, we are here. People will start joining live shortly. We're going to be giving people an update on what they can expect tomorrow with this meeting in Alaska between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, Putin coming on American soil. I was going to, we'll let people start to gather. It was funny. I gave you a call moments ago because I wanted to pick your brain, given that you were the original person that Donald Trump sent back in the first term to basically this is part two of the movie, and usually part twos are worse than part one. And
Yeah.
no offense to you, Lev, but part one didn't end so well. And part two is worse than your part one. When you were basically the Witkoff of part one in a way, right? Like, I mean, you were the guy that he sent. You were like the envoy that was out there and doing these meetings. And so I wanted to call you to get your advice as I start to cover this, what we can expect, what's going on behind the scenes, because you were the guy behind the scenes in the first term. And then I figured, why do our conversation, just me and you? So I said, I hung up on you in about 30 seconds very rudely because I called you. And then I said, let's just do this on Substack and let's have the conversation. So I truly don't, perhaps as a independent reporter, I should know the way this discussion's going to go. But the fun about this is I want to hear as though we were on the call together. Let's just bring everybody on and they can listen to what the phone call was going to be like when I called
Yeah.
you to find out. So the meeting's happening tomorrow, Lev. It's happening on an Air Force base. In or on a military base in Alaska. So I'm not sure where this ranks in terms of Donald Trump inviting the Taliban to go to Camp David on 9/11, but it's certainly right up there.
And it's there.
So as you, the kind of previous envoy, you are, just so everybody knows, Lev was the first one, first term. He was the guy who went there. You were the person who went to Ukraine. You were the person who all of the things that we're now seeing with Zelensky, you were the guy delivering those freaking messages out there. So what do we expect tomorrow? What are you looking for? How should we look through these issues, Lev?
First of all, Ben, thanks, man, for having me. And I'm so happy you did it this way because that's why we have such a great community here on Substack. That's right. We were gonna go talk about this on the phone and then write a letter and then like, hey, let's just do it, get there live, and let's just bring this, have this conversation in front of this whole world to see because it's that important. So props to you, and that's what independent journalism is all about. And that's what everybody, the Midas guys, all about the brothers. I was with you from the beginning. I remember when you guys said so. I'm telling you, props to all the independent journalism you guys do out there. So, I mean, look, Ben. First of all, it's incredible to see that he's still doing it because when I was there, when I was that shadow diplomacy guy on the ground in Eastern Europe doing all the dirty work, because we went against the deep state. We didn't trust people that were around Trump. But now he actually went in and put all his loyalists in. He purged all the people out there. He fired everybody that even remotely didn't like him. He has all these, and he's still going using the Witkoffs. He's still using that shadow diplomacy tactic because that's what Donald Trump is. That's how he maneuvered. That's why Marco Rubio has no idea what's going on. Pete Hegseth has no idea. Tulsi Gabbard has no idea. None of these people have an idea, but Steve Witkoff has the true idea because he's been the man. Just think about this, guys. Steve Witkoff is the only person, I think, world record that's met with Vladimir Putin in a matter of 6 months, 5 times. 5 times. I mean, there's historians out there. Somebody could show me somebody else that's met with Steve. I don't think his own family has met with Vladimir Putin in 6 months, 5 times. I mean, besides it, I mean, it's a very incredible feat to achieve. Also, you have to understand from somebody that was on the ground. Let me give you an example of how some of these meetings go, because most people think, oh, because it's diplomatic. There's he comes there and there's all these people around and there everybody's watching. No, no. That's why he sends Steve Witkoff. Steve Witkoff flies in there and gets met by people like Kirill Dmitriev, who's another guy that's like a Steve Witkoff, but on Putin's camp. That is, runs his wealth fund. And they then start prior to the meeting, the first couple of days, they'll go out to beautiful restaurants. He'll be introduced to all these different oligarchs, different people that want to have great relationships with the president, want to have great relationships with America, business. That's where Steve's going to turn around and say, "Hey, I can't be involved, but my son, Zach, he might be, able to." I mean, this is what's happening in all the deals that are taking place. Then it's the prep work comes in that, this is what needs to be done. The first thing you got to understand is Whitcomb goes back just like Trump with the Russian oligarchy, going back to the 90s when just the real estate and everything else, because that's his own background. He's also had interaction with a lot of these. I mean, he's very close. One of his business partners right now is Len Blavatnik. For those of you that don't know, Len Blavatnik, I mean, well, it's set to be there. There's no, concrete facts that he's tied to the Kremlin, but if it, smells like it, looks like it, it's pretty close to just knowing from my relationships in that world and knowing how close and the people he does business with, done business with in the past. That Len Blavatnik is very, very powerful in that world, and that's one of Steve Witkoff's partners, to say the least. So, with that said, there's this was all prepared. One of the reasons also, Ben, I broke it. The reason why they even met, this meeting was taking place, is because it's to cover up one of the two reasons. A, the whole Epstein thing. If you remember, JD Vance was supposed to have the dinner. We broke the story, and then all of a sudden it was because they also have somebody on loose cannons. His name is Dan Bongino, that they're trying to corral because they can't come out with the Epstein story until they have everybody on the same page. And Bongino, I'm not going to go so deep into it because this is more about board meeting, but Bongino is definitely not on page with them. And that's why they even had a meeting at the White House with Pam Bondi and Kash Patel to try to get him to corral him to get him back on the page. But it's worse because while Woodruff was in the Kremlin, before he even got a chance to leave, Putin, my sources told me, Putin literally told Woodruff, "Hey, tell Donald that if he really wants to take away all that bullshit that's going on in America, we should have a meeting." And that's where, before he even left the Kremlin, he called Trump and said, "Listen, Putin's willing to have a meeting. Let's put it together. It'll break the news cycles. It will change everything around." Because at the same time, Putin needs time. He's preparing an all-out assault on certain parts of Ukraine that the media is not talking about them. I'm hearing within the next probably 48, 72 hours, while this either prior to, during, or right after the meeting, is going to be a major attack on Ukraine. Putin and the people that are going to this meeting, that's another thing that you have to take. Like, you watch the pundits out there, they're all talking about, oh, what are they going to talk about? You got to take a look who's also going to this meeting. These aren't just regular diplomats on Putin Russian side. This is Putin's inner circle. The reason they're all coming here is not to be able to discuss peace about Ukraine because they have a stance. Witkoff knows the stance. Trump knows the stance. They've said it out loud. The only way there'll be any peace in Russia's mind is if Ukraine gives up big chunks of land as a concession. We know Ukraine's not going to do it. So there is not going to be any peace or concession. It's all makeup. What really is going to be talked about is legitimizing Russia back into the financial world, starts lifting sanctions, having airlines start traveling between Russia and America, open some sort of trade. Putin's even floating. This is the crazy part. Not Putin. I mean, Trump's even floating. My source said something then. So he's negotiating with Ukrainian land and Ukrainian mineral rights with Putin. That supposedly that contract he signed. Remember that big contract they signed that was
Yeah.
supposedly if Ukraine signed it, that's going to give them all the security. Nobody's going to attack Ukraine while they're partners with America. Well, Putin not only did he attack, he kept attacking, and that's exactly the land where the minerals supposed contract is.
So Trump's a real estate guy, a bad one. So Trump thinks about it like real estate, like a sublease. I own it. I'm
Exactly.
we and now I'm gonna lease it to Putin in exchange for, this. I mean, that's how Trump is thinking about it. Now, Lev, one of the things though that we've seen very powerfully happen though is Europe and Zelensky. they've all banded together shoulder to shoulder, and they've said there's been meetings held every day, and they said not under our watch, so let's be very clear. There's a ceasefire that must happen first, then we can have other conversations. But there will be no land given up by Ukraine. There will be a ceasefire, and those are our terms. Europe and Zelensky are not even invited to this thing, which how could you have a proper negotiation from the outset without Ukraine and Europe or anyone there on their behalf? It's the height of militia. I mean, imagine. I'm just trying to think of, a good example, that if let's say you and I had a deal, and you and I had a deal over whatever, and then I spent all of this time, negotiating with I like Aaron, I mean, your son Aaron's part of the Midas. So Aaron and I then had a conversation about how we're going to break the deal between Ben and Lev. And at some point you'd be like, hey, are, 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 are,
Hello, yeah.
you want to maybe bring everybody in as well, and so it's a crazy setup to begin with.
Because what you said and you called it right, it's a setup. It's the theatrics. It's not a real deal. Because if this was a real peace deal, you would have Zelensky at the table. You would have European representatives at the table. That's why this is all smoke and mirrors, because it's made up for two people only. One person is Vladimir Putin. And for him, it's because his economy is a shit. They need to get these sanctions lifted. They need to be able to start trading. They need to be able to have Trump open it up for them as soon as possible. So the best way to do it is to get this meeting, to pretend that there's some peace happening. And again, you're going to see the way they're going to formulate it is they're going to come out and say that Vladimir Putin wants peace. He's willing to stop. But it's Ukraine that Zelensky doesn't want to give the land up. And Trump's going to frame it from a standpoint, he should be happy that Trump doesn't take all the land, because in Trump's evil mind, he really believes, because Woodcock feeds this to him every day, because this is the Russia propaganda machine, is that Russia could win at any day. The only reason they haven't taken over Ukraine as of now is because of you, Trump. But if the second you take hands off, we're going to take over Ukraine. This is the type of shit that's being spewed and being told to him. So in his mind, he does. I mean, just think about Ben. He even said it out loud. He said yesterday, I think it was. He goes, "I spoke to a very smart man, Victor Orban, very smart man." And I asked him a question. I said, "What do you think? Does Ukraine have a chance of winning this war?" And he laughed at me. He said, "Are you crazy? They have no chance. This is the Russian powerful army." But just think about what he's talking about. He then gave another Russian propaganda a story. Think about it. He had to have heard this story how many times for him to be able to remember and repeat it, because it's a Russian propaganda story that there was a general that made a mistake. The only reason Russia did not take over Ukraine in 4 days is because the general made a mistake. Instead of taking the tanks across the good road, the highway, he took him into the mud through the villages, and the tanks got stuck. And because of that, with a smirk, Ben, he turned around and said, knowing Vladimir the way I know him, that general is not around anymore. Just just think about the thought in his mind that he would love to have get rid of his general.
The interesting thing there too, right? You see how these authoritarian minds bend time and space and set new deadlines. Remember, Putin said it would be 3 days to get to Kiev, that we would take it over in 3 days. And then Putin had his own 2 more weeks, 2 more months. I've got this. We're going to take it over. And here we are now, many years later. And Ukraine has, by and large, repelled the biggest waves. It's not to say that, I mean, Russia has been able to take over lands in the east and make some advances, but by and large, Russia, which has been viewed before this war as the second or third most powerful army in the world, which seems to really be the second most powerful army in Ukraine, and Ukraine has adapted, evolved their tactics, the drones have been a major advancement in how Ukraine has been able to use these drones. Every day right now, we see Ukraine striking deep into Russia, drones hitting oil refineries, rail, and really harming the Russian economy. And so we know there's a reason why Putin is getting troops from North Korea right now, because they are
Great.
struggling. You don't get troops from North Korea if you think you're doing great.
And nobody's
So
reporting this, not CNN, not MSNBC. You hear it. That's why independent journal is so important because nobody's talking about the North Korea troops and arms that are going in today. Go ahead, Ben. I just needed to point that out because that's extremely important. That's great.
and Iran, and so all of this is interconnected as well. And to me, it's not a conspiracy theory to actually say that for Donald Trump, not wiping out the Iranian nuclear facilities, doing a performative strike where we all know Iran still has the enriched uranium. But what Donald Trump said now is, well, actually, now we don't have to do sanctions against Iran. Iran's free to go because we did these B 2 bomber strikes. So what does Iran do? Iran amps up its oil sales to China,
China.
ramps up its drone sales to Russia. We pull back our arms sales to Ukraine. We say that NATO has to buy from the United States, but then drag out the purchase and acquisition process, as Trump always does, because all of this is to set the scene. And Trump's, I think, just doing everything he can to buy the 2 weeks that Putin keeps on telling him that he need. Just give me another month, give me another year. I'll be able to take away. And so Trump is doing the 2 weeks, 2 weeks, because Putin's doing the 2 weeks and 2 weeks. That's what this is about, huh?
I called him in Brooklyn. We give these nicknames for Trump. I call him 2 week Donnie. I mean, it's 2 week Donnie. Everything is 2 weeks with him when it comes to it. But you couldn't have said it better. It's exactly right. I mean, what you talked about Iran is very important because I wrote about my Substack. And if those of you want to go back and look at the timing, it was all staged. Putin coordinated. It was between Putin, Netanyahu, and Trump. All three of them needed to get something out of it. Netanyahu needed to get out of full destruction of relief so he could do whatever he wants in Palestine and the Gaza and the West Bank, and you see it happening out, play out. Putin, Iran needed to be able to save their nuclear weapons, have relationship with Russia, and they took like the hit on behalf of Russia. Russia coordinated the whole thing. Putin got what he wanted because, like you said, now he's getting the jihad and everything happening. China's getting the oil. Trump basically said China could go buy oil from them. He goes sanctions India supposedly 25% tariffs because they're buying oil, not 100%, not 500%, not all of this, but 25% symbolically because that's what this is all about. This is all theatrics, and the major producer director of this whole world theatrics is Vladimir Putin, and his main actor is Donald Trump. I mean, that's what's being played because he's not smart enough to do all of this. He's being played like a fiddle. But because of his greed, Ben, because of his greed for power, because of his greed for lust for money, for his greed to be able to turn America, because he wants to be able to have the same respect from the media, not respect, scared, basically. He wants everybody to bow down to him like they do to Kim Jong-un, like they do to Vladimir. When he walks in the room, he wants everybody to stand still at attention. He wants a dictatorship, an authoritarian country. And that's what we're living in right now because of what he's doing. I mean, we're living in it now.
And this is what I'll tell. We have a big audience here, close to 3,000 people, who are watching this. First off, subscribe to Lev's Substack, subscribe to our Substack. It's an important thing for us here at the Midas Touch Network to bring you voices also like Lev on areas of specialty, right? Like this conversation's an important one because don't you want to know what happens in the room? Like Lev was in the room. So if I want to know, I mean, Lev, no offense when it comes to talking about, the consumer price index. I may not go to you on that one,
I'm
but
not
when it
there.
comes, but this is your area. You know it. You saw it firsthand. You know the roadmap, and so much of what we're seeing in corporate news is ignoring the actual people who know what happens, like you, but watching and seeing what's happening in the world and making very basic connections. It's easy for the media to report Donald Trump was at the Kennedy Center yesterday and he unveiled, and so it was funny. I did a local media hit, yesterday, and they showed that segment before me. And then the host said, "Well, why do you think the Midas Touch Network is growing?" I said, "Because that piece that you just presented about how in the Kennedy Center there were two women, like I'm watching that segment. I said, let's just talk about it. There were two women in evening dresses. Why are they wearing evening dresses like that next to Donald Trump? Donald Trump appoints himself the chairman of the Kennedy Center
I
and then
can't
makes
believe it.
himself the head of the awards. These two women in the evening dresses are unveiling like Sylvester Stallone's face, like getting an award. Donald Trump is saying his favorite song is I Will Survive, which is actually about someone who lost their job for Motown Records and got put on the unemployment line. And then Donald Trump is talking about how he's okay with Russia hacking the United States because that's just what Russia does. And I said, that's crazy. And people aren't calling it out. It's just being presented as a thing. So this meeting in Alaska is just being presented. Oh, well, Donald Trump is having peace talks with Vladimir Putin in Alaska. It's like, we're not dumb. Why are you doing that? Why are you not saying why are they doing that? And why aren't you just looking at what's happening in Iran, what's happening in Israel, what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Europe? So we know that this whole thing is a setup, and it's not being biased against Donald Trump to call this meeting a setup against Ukraine and a meeting that's intended to hand Putin a victory. That's what it is. That's not me being a leftist or a progressive. That's literally the purpose of this meeting. That's what all the data tells us. So everyone's like, "Well, you're just a leftist or the progressive." I'm like, "No, I'm just telling you the freaking facts and the data that this meeting is a setup. Trump will leave saying there was major breakthroughs, but Zelensky's going to need to step up. It's a way not to give Ukraine weapons, to buy the time that Putin needs to launch the Eastern offensive, to strengthen his alliances with Iran and China, to pull America away from NATO. That's it. That's what it is. That's what it is. It's not a left or right. It's just a truth versus false. That's truly what's going to happen. Lev, I got to jump. So
Absolutely.
I want you to have the last word on this. And yes, I will get a new platform for my phone. Here's the issue for people just joining. I called Lev to ask Lev for advice about my reporting today because I know he knows. So then Lev and I just said, you know what? Let's just go live right away. We didn't really think it through about the location. So I'm sorry I
Right.
had to shake your camera. Lev, you take the final word.
You got, but absolutely. First of all, every one of you out there, make sure you are an extension of Ben's voice, the Midas Touch voice, Aaron's voice, my voice, True Teller's voices. You need to go out there, be our megaphone, spread the message far and wide because the media, they're running around. They want clickbaits. They want, the attention. Oh, what's going to happen with blah, blah. We know what's happening, not only because we have the data, but we also have sources, really good sources. Not only have I been in the room, I still have people in the room today. So stay tuned and we're going to bring it down to you. We're not going to let them get away with it. And the most important thing, don't let the Epstein files die out. The media hasn't been talking about it for a week. Make sure we keep an eye. That's his kryptonite. There's more to it. There's a lot more to it. And we're going to need it for the survivors, for everybody else. We got to keep your attention and eye on the ball. Thank you, man, for having me, brother. Oh, wait.
Subscribe to
Uh, Thanks.
subscribe to Lev's
I'm doing
Substack.
I'm sorry, I was gonna say right after this in an hour, I'm doing Unleash with Michael Cohen and Malcolm Nance. We're gonna really go into some shit there. So
I know I may be competing with you in 20 minutes. I'm going live with Under the Desk News over
uh,
there. So are we going head to head? Are
no,
we gonna
you actually you guys have an hour start. We're going an hour after you, so it's perfect. Double header. First, go watch Ben at 2 o'clock in 20 minutes, and then come watch us at Unleashed at 3. So great day today. A lot of information.
All right, I'll see everybody in 20 minutes with Under the Desk News. See y'all soon. Thanks, Lev.
You got guys. Take care, guys.